Hello, welcome to another edition of Through a Therapist's Eyes. I am Chris Gazdick. He is Craig Graves. I'm a mental health and substance abuse therapist. He is an unbeatable mind life coach. Highlighting the book today, Re-Understanding Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self. It's kind of going good, man. I'm enjoying talking with people about that, starting to get some feedback about it. That's really cool. Out of my office, I give a 20% discount. If you come to my office, you get a 20% discount. Everyone needs to know that. And we'll have like 50 people show up tomorrow at the office. What would DW do?
That'd be cool if it did, right? Yeah.
That would be.
You signing copies in the office too?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I got a little stand up in there, and it's been really neat. If you have checked that out, I really am interested in getting your feedback, your thoughts about the content, and what you think of the book. I'm hoping that it's been a little bit helpful out there, folks.
I'm sure it has. It's a good read, guys. If you hadn't read it yet.
So this is the human emotional experience. Let's figure this thing out together. This is kind of, I forgot to say this is not delivery therapy services in any way. On one show, if any show, I should ever say that, this would be the show to say that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Let me say that again. This is not the delivery of therapy services in any way whatsoever. You'll understand why I'm making a big deal out of that here in a second. So ADD is the topic today, attention deficit disorder, and I really wanted to kind of get into the daily kind of impacts, the daily behavior, if you will. How can you really kind of begin to understand, the process of what it's like to live in those shoes? Because a lot of people talk about ADD, and a lot of people don't have it, but maybe we do. And there's even some neurological reality of studies and things we're learning about the brain that's kind of saying that we're scattering a little bit with that. I can't speak intelligently about that, but with computers and social media and the way the world is and our multifaceted approach to, Googling something, having a conversation while we're listening to music all at the same time is kind of, there's a lot of stuff hits us in a lot of ways, and I wonder about that. I wonder about that, how that affects us. I wonder out loud about that. Craig, what we're going to do, you want me to tell the audience, or do you want to tell the audience kind of how we've talked about framing this particular episode?
Yeah, last time we did a show on ADD, at the end of the show, I was like, wow, I might have it, because of some of the things that you brought up as potential things to look for. So as we talk about it today, we're going to kind of not as like Chris said, it's not therapy. We're not trying to diagnose me or Chris. I think he's going to share some things about himself too, but just kind of see what comes up as we talk through some of this stuff in relationship to me and also maybe to him too. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I want to make sure everyone understands in the audience. Like, I am not qualified to diagnose, Craig, and there's a reason for that. Okay, I diagnose stuff all the time. ADD, bipolar, depression, anxiety, whatever, different types of anxiety. I mean, I'm more than qualified to diagnose somebody with ADD. But why would you think, Craig, that I am not qualified to diagnose you?
Because we're friends.
Right.
Yeah.
It clouds clinical judgment. It clouds, your ability to really accurately see symptomology. You can't really have that objectivity that you really need to be a good diagnostic clinician. And so I just do not have that with you. You irritate the crap out of me. Sometimes. And that has nothing to do with anything clinical, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure I irritate the crap out of you.
Definitely goes both ways, my friend.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ouch. That hurts.
Is that critical? Need to go back and listen to the other episodes?
Yep, that was one of the four horsemen.
Is it contempt?
Oh, no, we're definitely not in contempt, brother. So, but it did. I really kind of thought creatively about this because I think a lot of people out there, Craig, really kind of wonder about themselves with these things. And ADD is, as I just started the show off, one of those things I feel like that people wonder about. And they hear about it, and they really, people make jokes, that's my ADD, in a moment when they're a little flighty or something. So how do you go about really making, a decision? And I think really what I would say is to go to somebody who's qualified. Don't go to your friend. There's a reason why doctors don't practice medicine on other doctors, right? Don't go to your buddy. Don't go to your buddy who's a therapist or a doctor, right? Because it breaks that up. go to a doctor, go to a therapist, and kind of look into it, because I tell you, this can be a stressful thing. And a lot of people, Craig, particularly in their 40s and 50s and 60s, we didn't have ADD when we was kids. Didn't get called out, pretty much. Now in the 90s, it really started to come around pretty good, but we didn't really have this when we were in elementary school and younger years. And so there's a lot of people, I'm telling you, man, there's a lot of people walking around 45, 55, 60 years old that have lived a life of ADD and have no idea that that's the case. Right? So that's part of when you text me is what happened. You text me and you're like, hey, man, I think I have ADD. I'm like, yeah, yo, I do too. You remember? And then you text me back, no, really, seriously, man, like, I do wonder that.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of people out there like that.
There could be, but you said something interesting. You said that we didn't have this when we were kids. And, a lot's changed environmentally since we were kids as far as what we're eating and all the chemicals and preservatives and stuff like that that's in our food. So there could be some of that at play too. I mean, it may be that it was less back in our time, and now it is more for those reasons. And I'm sure social media, man, has got a big play in that too.
Yeah.
Maybe not social media, but phones in general.
Yeah. No, that's what I was wondering out loud about. I wonder out loud for sure, if some of that, could possibly be the case.
Yeah.
Because...
Yeah, I coached, and I think I mentioned this last time. I don't remember that show a whole lot because it was so long ago, and I don't remember why I sent you that text afterwards.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens tonight. But I think I talked about, I used to coach 4th and 5th grade boys at the elementary school up the street. We coached Let Me Run. So we would have a lesson, and then we would run laps, training for a 5K, and then we'd have a 5K at the end of the season. And so I started when my boy was in the 4th grade, and I think I did 5 years of it. So within 5 years, it got to where I wanted to stop doing it because the kids just wouldn't pay attention anymore. They would not sit still. And me and some of the other coaches one day were thinking, what's going on here? Our boys weren't like this. And that was about the time that the iPhone and the iPad and all that stuff came onto the scene. And one of the guys theorized that all of the technology was spewing over into the attention spans of these kids on the field.
It could be. When I said that, what I meant is we didn't have science that identified this. Because when I look back on a lot of my elementary school peers and, people that were around, and well, yeah, my sister had been diagnosed with ADD, although that was complicated because I think I've shared on the show, she's deceased. Actually, we just passed over an anniversary, dude. Dude, that was weird. Already a year, for sure. So, I just meant we didn't have the science. When I look back, we had kids that were hyper, we had kids that were disorderly, we had kids that were class clowns, we had kids that were really just not listening, we had kids failing and struggling a lot, and we just didn't know why.
Well, my point was there could be some environmental factors at play that are making it more prevalent these days than they used to be.
And I wonder out loud about agreeing. Yeah.
Okay.
So I definitely think that it was around in 1923.
I'm sure it was, I'm sure it was.
We just didn't. It was just, and that's part of the unfortunate reality that one of the reasons why I kind of like working with kids is, we'll get to talking about this a little bit more, but it really impacts their life track, man. It impacts the way that they feel about themselves, and a lot of self-confidence problems and doubt and relationship problems are directly tied to this, particularly relationship problems in the adult world with ADD. So I am curious, Craig, as we talk about this, I wanted to ask you, and I think your answer is going to be like, dude, I have no idea. But have you thought about that conversation as much as I have?
Which one?
Between you and I, after we did the show? It wasn't a conversation.
Obviously not.
Yeah, right? It's just gone?
Yeah, I'd forgotten about it. I mean, I remembered once when you brought it up, I remembered, but I hadn't thought about it really at all.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because that's a big statement, and I've thought about that a lot. And that's why I thought back that this would be a kind of a creative show to do.
Well, let's get into it,
man. Okay. But I wanted to hit that because where your brain went with that, and it's curious to me, if how adults assess that. If it's just snap across the screen and they forget about it when they really do have this until they come in. Because I'll tell you, when adults come into my office and I'm identifying adult ADD, and in my mind very clearly, they don't have any idea, man. Like they've lived a life with this. And it's just curious to me how we can miss it so much.
Dude, I'm kind of getting bored. Were you saying something? I wasn't listening.
ADD. He's nailed, audience. No, he was joking. He was joking, and so am I. So, look, okay, what is ADD? You don't remember at all. Can you recall what ADD is in any of that we talked about? It's kind of a non-diagnostic thing for you.
No, actually, I know it's attention deficit disorder,
Yeah,
obviously, but I don't know anything. I don't remember anything else, man.
Okay, it's just interesting to me. So, okay, this will be good review, and it was episode 47 that I'm talking about.
Okay.
Okay, so go back to episode 47. Tag onto this one, gives you a good note on, what ADD is and whatnot. So first of all, it's not attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Oh my God, it drives me crazy when people say ADHD. It's not ADHD anymore. It's ADD, either an inattentive type, a hyper type, or a combined type. The hyper type is people that are just, hyper, as it says. The inattentive type is, when people drift off. They're with you, but they just get drifty. They just drift off. Okay, inattentive. They're not blowing you off. Their brain just goes to something, and they go and they look at something. They do something. And their brain comes back, and you never know that it's happening. So a combined type, obviously, is both being inattentive and hyperactive. I don't know. Do I want to go into symptom sets and whatnot? I don't know that I want to do that a whole lot. But the DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. I think that we have to touch that if we're going to kind of go with what is ADD, and this little segment here is going to do that for us. The DSM characteristics and the signs and symptoms, right? So you're kind of looking at inattention. Let's just take fails to give close attention to detail, trouble holding attention, doesn't seem to listen when spoken to, following through on instructions and finishing things, meaning they'll start things and not finish them, often has trouble with organization of tasks and activities, avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to do things with long mental effort. A lot of times people with ADD, they like to read books, often loses things necessary for tasks. My kids do have ADD.
Are you on the notes, or have you gone somewhere else?
I'm giving you the DSM kind of symptom
okay.
sets. Yeah,
so you're actually in
the
the manual over there. Okay,
yeah,
I got you.
Correct. My kids do have ADD. We believe and see, and I mean, he never has the cord for his Chromebook. Never has. Doesn't know where it's at. There's age appropriate, but there's also these things that I just listed off: easily distracted and forgetful in daily activities. Those are what you get with inattention, right? Age appropriate too, by the way. You can't expect a 6-year-old to keep track of his tennis shoes all the time. He's not going to, they just don't have that brain development, right? So there's age appropriateness with all these things. Same thing with adult ADD. So the hyperactivity, you'll see people that fidget, tap their hands or feet. They squirm in situations. They can't remain seated for long periods of time. Run out or climb on things. In situations where they're not supposed to get up, they get up. Often unable to play or take part in leisure activities, just really being quiet and relaxing. They got to go. They're on the go. They're driven by a motor. They talk excessively. They blurt out answers before they're asked. These are things with the hyperactive kids, right? Have trouble waiting their turn. They're interrupting or intruding on others. They're breaking into conversations. They're impulsive, okay? So these are the diagnostic things. The inattentive is more of the daydreamy type, disorganized, not following through, like I read. The hypertype is the fidgety, active, sometimes aggressive kids. They're just impulsive, okay? And then a combined type is really when you got both of them, obviously, right? Those are really the particular signs and symptoms. And I don't want to spend really much any more time on that. But does that make sense, Craig? I mean, what
it makes sense to me, man. It makes sense to me. And I'm reading the notes, the show notes here you got. You got inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity.
Yep.
And then you got a lot of text out there after each one of those. And, I don't remember what we talked about last time. I've already said that. But I don't feel like I have any of these things, I'm a pretty organized guy. I don't have any problem staying on task unless my kid needs help with their math. I'm not daydreaming. I always pay attention and active listen. You mentioned active listening earlier. I think through decisions. I'm not making spur of the moment decisions. I'm not interrupting people. In fact, I probably sometimes pause too long after somebody finishes, and either somebody else blurts in or they start talking again, then I don't get to say what I want to say. And I'm not hyperactive. I'm not squirming or fidgeting or tapping, and I'm not doing any of that stuff.
Here's the difficult thing, and first of all, honestly, I don't see any way possible that you have any of the hyperactivity stuff. It's just not there.
Yeah, right.
You're one of the calmest people I know, particularly as you've done the breathing and all that kind of stuff. But the point, even in the hyperactivity, the thing you got to realize is, as adults, we kind of manage things, and we realize that we can't be irresponsible. And as a matter of fact, these things are more obvious as kids, because the main issue with kid ADD, and that's why we're not going to spend much time today on children, right? We're going to be talking more about adults and the daily impacts of adult ADD, okay? And I'm wanting to slow down and set this up for the next couple of days tomorrow, because I really want to help people to identify that haven't identified this. Again, we can live a lifetime with this, and most people can say those things, Craig, in their inside of themselves that have ADD, because when a kid is a kid with ADD, their main issue is productivity. That doesn't look that way at all with adults, right? You cannot sit there in meetings and squirm around and be hyper and be impulsive. Like, we're mature adults. We know that we can't act that way. But I can tell you that adults have the hyper type of ADD. But it looks differently than we see it in obvious ways as kids. When you get into adult, it's more the interactions. It's more the way that people experience you and what's going on, and way that you experience information coming to you and what's going on with your thoughts. It really takes a lot more effort. And here's the thing. You can't, I think oftentimes, and I use this with this notion with people with anxiety or depression, whatever it might be in the mental health field that you don't know you're dealing with. If you were to jump out of your body like Freaky Friday, and you were to jump into somebody else's body, you know the movie Freaky Friday, right?
No.
Oh, you don't remember that?
No.
Freaky Friday is a movie in the 80s or something where a mother and daughter had a
I do
moment.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
My daughter was watching that some time ago.
Really? Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, you told me your kids love the 80s movies. I actually turned my kid onto that a little bit. We watched Top Gun. Anyway, if you jumped out of your body like Freaky Friday and jumped into another person's body and experienced the way their brain processes data, people would be shocked. They'd be utterly shocked, I think, because we just don't know what it's like, and we feel like the way we experience something is the way generally people experience it. And really, Craig, it's just not. I've spent a lot of time over my career trying to get in my clients' shoes. I think that's just what you've got to do to be a good coach too, by the way. I mean, you know that, right? You've really got to try to be in their shoes and what they're really feeling like. That's why you've been doing Unbeatable Mind life coach strategies for what, like a decade?
Kind of close to it, yeah.
Yeah. So you want to know what they're experiencing, and I do not have a lot of the diagnoses that I diagnose. And so I've really, really dug in, which is the result of digging into understanding that is this show, helping people kind of see things that they might not see. It's really easy to miss in adult ADD. Have I made that point hard?
You made it, yeah.
It's really hard to see ourselves. We can't experience that.
Got it.
Remember, this is a data processing issue. We talked about this in episode 47. And I'm wondering if any of this stuff starts clicking back, Craig, when we talked about ADD, right? Your frontal cortex processes data. So it's all about the frontal cortex. That's the part of the brain that ADD is affected. It's abstract thinking. It's taking point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10, and 11, all together to create a thought or a belief, a perception, or a decision, right? Kids' brains are not developed. They can't get 1 through 11. They might get 1, 5, and 7 when they're young. Maybe they pick up a couple more. As our brains develop, the frontal cortex can do more abstract reasoning. So what happens for an ADD person when they're an adult? Their brains developed, right? So it's not terribly obvious that they have this ADD impact. But they're really having to work hard at managing staying on task, meeting those deadlines, seeing a project that you're really not interested all the way through, making promises and commitments that you didn't follow through with because you just got on to the next thing. But you're still productive. You're still raising kids. You're still making money. It's really kind of tricky, and we're going to get into the weeds. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty with this topic.
Let's do it, man.
Right? So do we have a good sense of what ADD is?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I do. Hope everybody else does who's listening.
Okay, so we're going to cover the next couple days a lot more of the daily impact. I'm going to super quick hit the kids, right? And then we want to spend the next couple days on the adult part. The kids is, kind of the effects. Boredom is a killer. They drift away. Hard to refrain from impulses, as we said. More than typical, more than the age-appropriate level. I mean, if you got a 10-year-old kid that's still stealing stuff, that's an impulse control. They just want it, and they're just not thinking about it. But they should by now kind of know. All right, your 6-year-old steals stuff. They might not realize, hey, that's not mine. You ever steal anything from a grocery store as a kid?
No, but I stole some stuff when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's every kid kind of does that when they're pretty young, but when they get a little bit older. So all these are age appropriate. But the biggest thing really to me is the most dangerous thing is the self-view and the self-talk that you get into. You start getting frustrated with school. You start taking on the characteristics that people put on you, the problem kid, the class clown, the ditzy one. I honestly had a client years ago that she was blonde, right? And we were talking about adult ADD, and she never knew it. She's one of these people I was talking about. Well, not specifically, but in example. You know what her nickname was?
No idea.
Blonde Ditz, right? She's always ditzy. She's always silly, and she's always giggly and weird. And all of her friends picked up on that, and it was like, that's just whatever her name was. Casey, we'll just say. That was Casey. Made up name. But it was just the way that she operated, and it's the way that she kind of thought. It makes me sad when kids feel like, I'm just not one of the smart kids. I just can't do school. I can't get those grades. It's just hard for me. Well, your brain's working differently, and I just think that's the most damaging daily effect of kids, particularly with ADD. Another one is poor frustration tolerance. It's you get irritable. And some of these you'll see as we talk more about adults, there's a big overlap there. So good sense of ADD and a little bit on daily effects of kids, and we want to kind of launch more into the adult type ADD and how this really looks.
Yeah, we should come back to kids someday, man. I got some thoughts on some of the things you said, but we'll get into that later, I guess.
Okay, maybe keep that. Let's go ahead and maybe start that out with show 2. Craig always has great thoughts. So for today, we're going to sign off, shut her down. We will see you tomorrow with Through a Therapist's Eyes. Have a good day, guys.